Good afternoon and welcome to the August 17th, 2020 meeting of the Parks, Recreation and Community Services Commission of the City of Glendale. Can we have the roll call? Oh, excuse me, I'm supposed to read this. I'm so sorry. Due to the evolving situation with the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Glendale Parks, Recreation and Community Services Commission will be available to the public electronically. Due to social distancing requirements, the public will not be able to attend the meeting. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. The meeting can be viewed on local cable, Charter Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T U-verse, Channel 99, or we're streaming online at https://www.glendale.ca.gov/public-meeting-portal. For public questions, public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting these questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person during the Glendale Parks, Recreation and Community Services Commission meeting. Now we'll have the roll call.
Commissioner Babayan is absent. Eberly? Present. Kalfayan?
Present.
Michael?
Present.
And President Wilson.
Here.
The agenda for the August 17, 2020 regular meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on or before Friday, August 14, 2020. The next item is 2 upcoming council agenda items.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Wolfson, members of the commission. We have one item coming up this month. On August 25th, we'll be taking a report to City Council for acceptance of Measure H funds in the amount of $33,000 for workforce development, to use those funds to assist homeless individuals in career development and career searches. And that will be taken on August 27th. I'm sorry, August 25th.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Item 3, Commission staff comments.
No comment.
Commissioner Eberly or Michaels? Any comments?
Commissioner Michaels, did you say something?
I was asking if you had any comments.
This time. Okay. I just wanted to say I was really happy to see that Parks are working with the school district to provide a safe place for kids to be during remote learning. I think that's wonderful, and that it's free is amazing and just a gift to so many parents.
I actually had a couple of general comments. I want to thank our city staff in particular for doing a great job of implementing the public health directives that we've received from the county and the state. And I noticed that we're trying a different technique for taping off the playground equipment in the parks, and I hope it's working out, and I'm really grateful that we're trying something different. And also I wanted to say I appreciate that staff comes up against the resistance. There's a lot of resistance out there, and you guys are really the ones who have to take that, and face up to it. And we have a lot of individualistic freedom that we enjoy, but that can also be a double-edged sword when people don't want to cooperate with things. So we have these very reasonable measures in place, and I'm really grateful that that you guys are being strong and persistent in keeping us safe. So I really appreciate that. So
Thank you.
thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications.
I don't think there's anybody calling in to talk to us. That's shocking, but true. Next item, please.
Next is 5 consent items. At A is approval of the minutes of the commission regular meeting held on July 20, 2020.
I will move it since I'm here.
Are you moving?
I'll
to-
second. I will second the minutes.
I'll take roll call. Commissioners Babayan is absent. Everly,
Yes.
Kalsayan,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
President Wilson.
Yes. Okay.
Item 6, reports information only at A is City of Glendale's 2020 Homeless Point in Time Count Report.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette Samvaliant. I manage the homeless programs for the Parks Department. President Wilson, members of the Parks Commission staff, today before you we will be presenting our 2020 homeless count results. The City of Glendale has been managing homeless programs since 1993 in the City of Glendale. And one of the requirements as part of developing a continuum and offering homeless services, city is required to conduct a one night count. This count is between City of Glendale providers, nonprofit organizations, other members of the Parks Commission, Board of Directors come together to go out into the community and develop an assessment to identify homeless services. Next slide, please. Why do we have to count homeless in our community? One of the requirements for the city to maintain competitive funding and apply nationally, we are mandated to get out in the community and conduct this assessment. And it also helps the city's Parks Department and city departments to develop planning and programming around homeless individuals and families that are experiencing. And it also gives us an opportunity to monitor the available programs we have for the city, as well as developing other programs for the future that changes year to year. Particularly, the federal government has requirements of who is counted for the homeless count. Uniquely, folks that are unsheltered, these are individuals or families whose primary nighttime residence is not meant for human habitation. So people that are sleeping in their cars or in the parks, anywhere in the abandoned buildings, in bus stations or someone's apartment, underground apartment structures. Those individuals that are unsheltered are counted in the count. The folks that are in our sheltered also are included in this particular count, and the sheltered folks are from the programs that we have is the emergency shelter program. We have transitional housing program and anyone who's in safe haven. Next slide, please. Specifically with comparison of our 2019 and 2020 homeless counts, the homeless count for 2020, we had identified 169 individuals on the streets of Glendale. Our homeless count was done in January this year, and we had over 40 volunteers that came out. In the past, we'd have Commissioner Michaels also part of the count and assist volunteering, conducting the needs assessment with our homeless individuals. And comparing to our 2019, we had identified 243. So we clearly, during the count in January, have reduced our homeless population that are unsheltered and sheltered in the city by 30%. A couple of the information in our slides and the next following slides that we have is the requirements of submitting to the federal government is the type of homeless that we are serving and we see in the community. And basically, out of the 169 persons that we enumerated, we had 65 persons were in families with children. This is a reduction by 19% from 2019. We also identified most of the population, 104 of 169 are individuals without children. So these are unaccompanied individuals in the city of Glendale that one night of the count, again, a reduction of 35% in the city from previous year. Next slide, please. Particularly in Glendale, we are seeing mainly serving white population. Compared to the next level, we see we're serving African American population and some folks that are multi-race population. About 6% of the population in Glendale are homeless who are Armenian of descent, but they're reported to HUD under the white population. Next slide, please. Predominantly with our homeless population, specifically folks that are under age of 18, those 42 are part of families, so they're included in the component with families. We did see a reduction in our 65 and over population this year in 2020 compared to last year, and we are predominantly seeing folks anywhere between 45 and higher in terms of experiencing homelessness. Single, male, unaccompanied individual is what we're serving at this moment. Next slide, please. A couple of the things that we have to report to the federal government includes folks that are chronically homeless, and what that means is that individuals who have been homeless for at least 1 year or longer and have a disabling condition. Those individuals are defined as chronic homeless. And in the city of Glendale, during 2020 homeless count, we had identified 38 people out of the 127 adults, 30% of our population experiencing chronic homeless. This is particularly a reduction in 2019, and one of the reasons of the reductions is that the city had developed some programming that tailored and targeted to the unaccompanied individuals, and this is the Housing First model. Next slide, please. Some of the subpopulation demographic details with regards to our 2019 and 2020 comparison. We did see a significant reduction in the special needs for our clients. Those experiencing severe mental illness, we saw a 15% reduction in 2020. We saw a 32% reduction in folks that are using drugs or alcohol, a 30% reduction in our domestic violence population, and a 71% reduction in our HIV AIDS positive clients. And the reason of these reductions for our special subpopulation is that we continue to apply funding for the city of Glendale under the continuum of care to serve the special subpopulation. So there's designated funding to serve the domestic violence population. The Housing First model programming is geared for folks that are mentally ill and dual diagnosis, substance abuse, so on and so forth. So it's thank you. So specifically for the HIV and AIDS population, we don't have the program in the city of Glendale. We make those referrals to other communities for AIDS programming. Next, please. Unfortunately, in the city of Glendale, for our last year's homeless count, we did identify an increase in our veterans population. We during our homeless count identified about 60% increase, and mostly the veterans that were first-time homeless was due to unemployment and chronic health conditions. And about 3 of those individuals out of the 8 were first-time homeless in the city of Glendale. Next slide, please. Particularly what this looks like for Glendale, out of the 169 total that we've seen, people come from different communities. And so for specifically in Glendale, 44 out of the 75 unsheltered persons became homeless in the city of Glendale. And some of the statistics behind as to why clients indicated they became homeless in the city include some of them experiencing high rent and unable to pay the rent increases due to no increase in their fixed income, whether it's Social Security disability or a stagnant employment income. An additional 11 people became unemployed. Few people became first-time homeless due to illnesses, and 13 persons due to other reasons. And some of the other reasons included in the data statistics is folks that were doubled up in their units with family members and were unable to stay in their units, so they end up being homeless in the city of Glendale. Next slide, please. Out of the 44, we have 93% of folks living in the city of Glendale for at least 6 years or more. And we have some of the data there before you. but around 26 people that were homeless in the city of Glendale that we enumerated last year were in the city of Glendale living for over 10 years. So some of the challenges folks are having difficulties again is dealing with employment and housing crisis nationwide. Next slide, please. Particularly, we're serving more male population, dominant male, and few female that are either fleeing domestic violence and or on the streets that we are working with. Next slide, please. Homelessness has changed since we have been working with the unfortunate COVID pandemic, COVID-19 since March. Our homeless outreach teams from Asencia and Glendale Police Department have seen new individuals coming into the city, and we continue to work even during the pandemic on the streets with our clients, making different referrals to different programmings. Now, the city did receive some ESG funds, Emergency Solutions Grant funds for COVID. We came before you or gave you an update last month's commission meeting with regards to some of the programming we had implemented. So part of the program, some of these individuals have been placed in hotel programs already. Next slide, please. This is just statistics for the commission in terms of countywide data and comparison to Glendale and some of the continuum of cares. Glendale, Pasadena, Long Beach is its own continuum, and Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LAHSA, oversees 85 of the cities out of the 88. And then the rest of the counties, particularly around us, are all the other continuums that we nationally compete with for funding, also compare resources and leverage information. We notice from here that Pasadena and Glendale have reduced homelessness in our 2020 homeless count, as opposed to some of the other communities have seen an increase in their county. In addition, San Diego County has decreased their homelessness as well. So few of our communities have developed different types of programming and reduced homelessness since 2019. Next slide, please. Part of the homeless count, before we were presenting before you today, is for the commission and the Glendale Homeless Continuum of Care, the board of directors and council to look at funding recommendations and availability of funds to continue to fund these programs. So we've made 10 recommendations. Some of the recommendations include utilizing Measure H funding that we received from the county to continue to apply to state funding. Earlier I had mentioned that the city of Glendale has reduced family homelessness and through Housing First, we have developed a lot of rapid rehousing programs. And that's because we received about $2 million or so with our HAP and cash funding, which is our recommendation number 3, and that we would apply for future year funding as it becomes available to continue to implement additional homeless programs. This year specifically, since we had an increase in our veterans population, we would be dedicating funds to continue to focus on the unsheltered veterans and coordinate those individuals with our the Veterans Administration as they have the VASH vouchers for housing. We also have a zero tolerance policy for children living on the streets and in the vehicles. And during our 2020 homeless count, we did not have any unsheltered families in their cars or sleeping on the streets. So functionally, in a sense, City of Glendale has a zero tolerance policy, and we met that recommendation. Next slide, please. The next several recommendations include to continue to align the Housing First model. This is something City of Glendale has been doing for a couple of years now, where our outreach team and the case managers go to the community. We take our paperwork, we do our research and assessment and intakes on the streets with our homeless clients, and then connect them to housing. Once they're settled in housing, then we bring the services to them, which is a very different model. How years ago they would all have to come into our centers, complete an intake, get into our shelter, and then graduate into housing. There is a high functioning programming with Housing First that we have successfully placed people in housing and making sure that they maintain their housing the first year. Once they pass that first year, they're pretty successful in maintaining that system. Additionally, few other recommendations is to continue to work with our police department to work through the streets and our outreach team to inform and educate everyone of our homeless services and to continue to serve them through our service programs. Continue to look at alternative programming in Glendale for folks experiencing with AIDS or HIV positive. And most recent pandemic has targeted different resources and our ability to continue to prevent homelessness and work with those that are experiencing homelessness due to COVID to make those funds available and those programs available to them. This is, concludes my presentation today. The homeless count is done with many volunteers in the city, and this is one of the requirements in order for us to apply for federal funding and maintain our homeless service delivery systems. So if there's any questions at this moment, I'm happy to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Eberly, do you have any questions?
I do. I actually have several. I'm curious why you think that the homelessness has gone down in Glendale by 30% when it's gone up 16% countywide.
President Wilson, Commissioner Elderly, that's a great question. With the city of Glendale, as I mentioned earlier, we received about $2.5 million last year. So last July until up to today, we received about $2.5 million. With that funding, what we did is we particularly developed rapid rehousing programs. And the rapid rehousing programs mean that anytime anyone is first-time homeless, we work with them to place them into new housing and provide financial assistance 3 to 6 months or up to 1 year, depending on the circumstances for families, and get them stabilized again, and then they sustain the lease ongoing. In addition to the $2.5 million, we also received funding for prevention allocation. So we were able to prevent some of the folks to become homeless. We have been experiencing with our Housing First model more aggressively because we find that when we ask clients to come into our shelters or our assessment centers, because they have mental health conditions or substance abuse or dual diagnosis, they're unable to follow those simple commands or requests. So our outreach team goes out to the community. They go to the parks, they go to the businesses, they actually conduct the intake and assessment on the streets with our participants, connect them to landlords, and then a case manager works with them directly to sustain and maintain their housing and basic life skills. That has become pretty successful in Glendale, and that's how we're able to reduce our homelessness by 30%. Also, when we have outreach availability through our police department and Essentia, anytime anyone experiencing homelessness, the business owners connect with us, we deploy our outreach team very quickly because we have the staff locally to handle that, and we're able to connect and provide services to the clients that are unsheltered. And those who are interested are able to connect quickly.
That's really remarkable. Thank you so much for your work. I also wanted to ask whether, with the new program where you're housing people with because they're at risk for COVID, whether you've seen any kind of enhanced capacity for job hunting and other kind of life maintenance things, given that they're now housed and they weren't before.
That's a great question. Right now, we are working with our Vertigo Job Center for folks who need the employment component to get folks back into employment. Some of our families are receiving the unemployment benefits, and we're working with them to save their monies as they are getting housing subsidies or support for the temporary time, so that when they're able to get back on their feet. The case managers continue to provide basic life skills, connecting them to meals, pantries, childcare programming, things that are offered in the community so that we can have the adults get back to the workforce to sustain their lifestyles.
Great. I noticed in the report you talk about permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing, and I'm just wondering if you can explain why someone or a family might qualify for one and not the others.
Sure. Thank you. That's a great question. So permanent supportive housing is specifically targeted for those chronically homeless individuals who have been homeless in the city for at least a year and have a disabling condition. So they have a chronic health condition. Typically those individuals who are not able to sustain themselves or obtain employment, and they're on fixed income like GR or sometimes no income, and so the case managers works with them to get employment. So those individuals or families that are chronically homeless with a disability unable to work qualify for permanent supportive housing programs. In the city of Glendale, we have a coordinated entry system that the full report discusses how folks are being referred. Transitional housing in the city of Glendale is a temporary housing program where families or individuals can stay up to 1 year. In that 1 year, they pay about 30% of their income towards rent, and the grant funds pay 70%. So it teaches them to pay rent on a monthly basis. In addition, there's savings about 40% of their income, so they're able to sustain themselves after they graduate from the transitional housing and they're placed into permanent housing with a subsidy or without a subsidy. In the transitional housing, employment is the key element where they're connected to employment or increasing their income through additional employment so that they can, again, sustain themselves after placed in permanent housing. And then rapid rehousing is a short-term subsidy. So it's only specifically for those individuals that become homeless first time in the city and still have some financial resources, but something significant happened. Maybe they had some illness or they lost some hours, but they're able to gain those hours back. So it supports 3 months, maybe 6 months maximum, and then people just maintain their units independently. So in the city of Glendale, we have about 150 permanent supportive housing units that we receive funding for, part of this homeless count report. And we have about 13 transitional housing units, and we have about 40 rapid rehousing units now because we're getting additional funds through the state of California for rapid rehousing programming.
Will those units last, or does it depend on the budget?
The state of California funding is currently approved another year. If it becomes available, we'll continue to apply for that. Our general 150 units that we currently fund is a national competition. As long as the city of Glendale does well, performs our programs and outcomes, and is coordinated and reduces homelessness, we will be able to compete for that funding and continue to sustain our housing funding for that.
Thank you, and thank you for your patience. I know some of this was probably covered in the report, but it's hard to assimilate all of it at once. And then my last question was just whether we know whether the city or other organizations have attempted intervention for any of the people who are counted as unhoused.
That's a great question, Commissioner Everly. So we continue to work with our school district liaisons because most of the families that are part of school districts are those that are doubled up. And so we identify those families that can no longer stay in the units with their family members or friends, and then work with moving them on to their independent units. Oftentimes it's income issues and they may not be able to do so. So we have to look at a bigger place for the two families to sustain. But unfortunately, because doubled up families are not considered homeless in the homeless programs, what we do is we make all of our homeless prevention programs available to folks and publish that and make that available to landlords and all the apartment associations so that people know there's resources available for clients. But it's difficult to count how many doubled up families we have unless they are assigned or go through a school district or they connect with our department specifically.
That's all my questions, but thank you again for your work. This is really impressive.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question for you. Those unsheltered homeless people, how do you keep in touch, especially the ones they're living in car or they're living outside in parking lots? How do we keep in touch with them as far as health, meals, or showers, and so on?
Commissioner Kalfani and members of the Commission, President Wilson, this is our homeless outreach team through Essentia. We have 2 full-time outreach workers. On a daily basis, that is their job. If they drive through City of Glendale, the known locations, or any calls we get in from the public, and to continue to offer services. Every day they go out, talk to clients, receive, provide services, and ask them to connect with our homeless programs. That's also done with our Glendale Homeless Outreach Team with our police department. Our police department has identified homeless officers that work with our homeless teams, and they also do the same thing. We do have resources available. We have hotel programs available. We offer them. In some cases, some folks are service resistant and they don't like to follow the rules or guidance or, save or anything with case management. So unfortunately with those, we continue to offer services on the streets, but they're not interested in housing or other programs. We can't mandate services if they're not interested and willing to participate in that. Thank you.
Commissioner Michaels, do you?
Yes. Thank you for the report. I noticed this was given to the Housing Authority first. Is that a schedule term?
Commissioner Michaels, I think you came in and out, but your question was the report was given to our City Council first before it came to the Parks Commission?
We can't.
It went to the House. Was that a schedule?
Yes. Commissioner Michaels, this particular report was information only. The process for our homeless programs is to go to our Continuum of Care board first that reviews and approves. They're our official body for the homeless programs. And then a report is done to council because council needs to defer and make recommendations and appropriate sometimes funds and allow staff to go seek funding for homeless services. We inform the Parks Commission as part of our department, but the approval process is our Continuum of Care Board, Council, and then Parks Commission. If there's a request, we can come back to you along the side with our board, but Council typically gets the first review on our reports.
Thank you. First, I'd like to commend the police department and the Essentia outreach team. Doing the homeless count, the volunteers had a very difficult time identifying homeless individuals, and without the assistance of the police and Essentia, we would not have found as many people as we did. Some of the individuals we found were living in cars that we would not have known except for the relationship that they had with the police and Essentia. So we want to commend both of those groups for their outreach efforts. I would like to ask, what are the boundaries of Glendale's continuum of care? You mentioned that Glendale, Pasadena, and Long Beach have their separate boundaries?
Yes, Commissioner Michaels. So the count is just for City of Glendale. So the map or the boundaries that's covered and governed within City of Glendale. Pasadena does its own count the same night. Long Beach and LA did their count in different nights because they oversee 85 of the 88 cities. So with specifically in Glendale, we go to east, west, north, and south of City of Glendale, in addition to the pre-identified and designated locations that our outreach and police department work with. So we canvass the city, and that there's a specific timeline that we have to accomplish this task that is required by HUD. So that's our boundaries. We don't go into LA side or Eagle Rock or Tahanga. If there are clients in those areas, we have to refer out to LA or the appropriate jurisdiction to handle so.
And with different jurisdictions, what are some of the differences in programs? I'm familiar with the Glendale programs. I've been involved in the homeless count for several years, but talking to other individuals who volunteered who may have had experience outside of Glendale, they said their programs weren't as effective. Can you give a little bit of perspective on that?
Commissioner Michaels, members of the commission, this is a really interesting question. What I can tell you is that every city, every community manages homeless programs to the best they can based on funds available and the population they're dealing with. Specifically in the City of Glendale, I've been working with homeless programs for 26 years. And so each year there is a unique population that we have to work with. There are programs we have to develop to be able to fill the gap. Even more now, specifically dealing with pandemic or the COVID-19 crisis, we have to continue to grow our programs and develop new programs to address that population. Most specifically, the federal funding for all the continuums, they fund permanent housing subsidies pretty much only. And they provide funding for the coordinated entry to the continuum. And that's both the same case for Glendale, Long Beach, Pasadena, and even at LASA. However, in different communities, there might be working with different subpopulation. In Pasadena, they have high number of transitional age youth that they have to develop programs for the youth population. Glendale, we don't have that challenge, luckily, and so our resources are targeted for veterans or families or individuals with very serious mental illness and substance abuse disorders. And so each year, part of this homeless count, one of the criteria for the city and the council is to look at available funding and what the gaps we have and who's still on the streets in the city of Glendale and what kind of programs we can develop. So this report will be submitted to federal government in a month or so, and that's when we would be applying for about $3.5 million to ask Housing Urban Development, HUD, to fund our existing permanent housing projects and apply for new funding that would target our unsheltered population. So each year we try to apply for new dollars, new programs that are, because we still have substantiate the need for unsheltered population. We at least need 75 units based on our homeless count and subsidies to support those unsheltered populations. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but if there's more needed, maybe I can defer to our director.
Well, thank you. I did want to go ahead and thank you and your department, and I would commend you as well for achieving a reduction in homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to, first of all, thank the staff for this report, which was very thorough and very informative. And I really appreciate the compassionate and sensitive way that our staff approaches the problem and the challenge of unsheltered people. We do have a smaller population in Glendale than a lot of surrounding cities, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And in reading the report and learning from it, I really would recommend anybody who's a member of the public who's interested in this issue to take a look at this report and bounce off on some of the terminology in it. I know I learned from reading it about, McKinney-Vento and a number of other things that are very informative and good to know about. And the fact that our city is one of only 3 cities in the county that has its own continuum of care is commendable, and I'm sure that that's part of the reason why we do so well. You hear rumors, why does Glendale not have as many homeless? And it's reassuring to understand that better and not rely on information that's not really good information. It seems like most of our decrease from 2019 to 2020 was among the unsheltered population, which is a good thing. I don't know how COVID is going to affect it as we go forward, but we will just have to deal with that. And again, I just think we do really a commendable job, and I want to shout out to my fellow Commissioner Grant Michaels, who volunteers, has been volunteering for a number of years, and I commend that. So anyhow, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have one question. I'm sorry, I forgot. COVID-19, will that affect our ability to conduct the count next January?
President Wilson, that's a great question. We're actually getting on a call with our Washington office next week regarding that. My guess is that we would still need to do a homeless count just the way we do outreach, but with proper PPE equipment. But I don't have a resolution on that at this moment. We will definitely come back to the Parks Commission and inform with regards to the decision that's made from Washington.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess our next report is citywide.
Next is item 6B, Citywide Sports Annual Program and Revenue Report.
President Wolfson, members of the commission, before you today is a citywide annual report for the fiscal year 1920. I will be doing the report today because Gabrielle's actually getting ready for the Education Connection Camp, which I know President Wolfson, Commissioner Eberly mentioned. So before you is the report. The city has 12 citywide fields, and the citywide fields are actually managed through the Glendale Sports Complex. But the citywide fields are Bay Permin, Brand Park, Dunsmore, Glorieta, Montrose, Pelanconi, Shoal Canyon, and Verdugo Park. And some of these, it's 8 facilities, but they have multiple fields. The citywide sports operation includes basically managing the 12 fields throughout the city, which includes scheduling play on the fields, meeting annually with the approved community youth groups to determine priority, managing the snack bar permits, scheduling the lights at the facilities, and coordinating the maintenance on the fields, working with our park services section. They also manage the tennis vendor contracts at 3 locations. We have 11 courts total, but 3 of those are through a vendor, and the adult basketball league. And we also have contract classes at sports contract classes that happen on citywide fields. The contract class participation. So contract classes are in citywide sports generated $32,850 during this fiscal year. This is a bit over half of the anticipated revenue for the year, which correlates to the cancellation of half the classes this season due to COVID. Staff feels that if the programs had continued as normal, the anticipated contract classes would have met the budget as anticipated, but because we had to cancel the classes due to COVID, we didn't meet that goal. We offer tennis, and it's every season for adults and youth at Montrose and Shoal tennis courts. Tennis participation has been dropping in the last 2 years. However, it was trending up in the first half of this reporting period. So between July 1 and February 28th, there were 39 participants. During this evaluation period, this was between July 1 of 2018 and February 28 of 2019, there were 39 tennis participants. During the same evaluation period this year, there were 44 participants. The youth soccer is offered every season at the sports complex in Glorieta Park. The participation was trending up during this evaluation period, as there were 200 participants between July 1 of 2019 and February 28th of 2020 versus 178 in the previous period for last year. All classes for the spring season were again canceled. For youth volleyball, classes offered were at CV High School Gym, and they're taught by a volleyball coach who's also employed for GUSD. We only offer in the spring and fall season due to the GUSD schedule, so we don't offer in the summer and winter. There were 16 participants in the fall of 2019, which is identical to the fall period of 2018. For adult volleyball, the drop-in program is offered at the Hoover High School Gym in the fall and spring. We don't have summer and winter sessions, again, due to GUSD schedule. We had 1,716 participants in the 18-19 reporting period and 930 participants in the 19-20 period up until the COVID closures. For badminton, it's a drop-in program offered at the Glendale Community College for the fall through spring seasons. We had 555 participants in the 18-19 fiscal year and 472 in the 8 months of the 19-20 operations. For citywide field rentals, as you can see, we broke out the number of hours of rental for each of the fields. The hours reflected are for permits for rentals, leagues, and classes. but they are a lot lower because, again, due to the COVID closures, we closed all the fields effective March 13th. We didn't have any youth sports activity for the rest of this fiscal year, but we did begin renting for youth sports camps starting June 22nd, so at Brand Park. So the rest of the youth sports camp rentals are reflected in the next fiscal year. So for this reporting period, we only had a couple of days of sports rentals in this fiscal year, which was at Brand Park. So overall, we had 12,150 hours of rentals in 1920 in comparison to 1819, which is 28,250 hours. The fields are offered to approved community youth groups as a priority, and then youth groups, and then private rentals. So the fields are offered to the youth groups for free during their season of sport, but they pay the nonprofit rate outside of their season. So for soccer, that period is September 1st through January 31st. So any of the soccer groups that are on our approved youth group, and the list, as you can see, is on the screen, they would get it for free, and then outside of their season, they pay the nonprofit rate. Field rentals generated $39,209 in fiscal year 1920 as compared to the $50,322 in fiscal year 1819. This represents 66% of the anticipated revenue for the year, which was really collected for about 66% of the year since we had closures. Staff anticipates that if we continued to remain open and continue rentals, that we would be able to meet our revenue goals. In fiscal year, this current fiscal year, beginning July 1st, we collapsed the special revenue fund into the general fund. So the 18-19 numbers, I know last year we would have reported it into two different funds, but starting this year, we are all in the general fund. So for comparison purposes, we combined the data for 18-19 into one number. But as you can tell, the revenue generated from the programs and rentals help offset the cost of the operation. In 1920, we are of course short on the expenditures because, again, due to closures and also some salary savings due to a vacancy, we didn't fully expend, but the numbers as presented are also not fully, the books are not fully closed because the accounting department is still doing accruals, and the year doesn't necessarily end until, I believe it's October, where everything is done and accruals are completed. So if for next year's report, the 1920 numbers might be a little different, but they will be finalized. So there might be some differences between what we're reporting today and what you might see for comparison purposes last year. But as you can tell, in comparison to 1819, we are lower in all of our numbers, not just expenditures, but also the revenues that we were able to bring in. And most of that is due to COVID closures. And as you could tell, the largest source of revenue that we have are the field rentals. And we had 39,000 in field rentals, 4,000 in building rentals, and those are probably the concession permits. Contract classes brought in 32,850, and sports leagues. Even though the sports leagues, which is the adult basketball league, is managed through the sports complex operation, the revenues are reported here. So that's $9,750. We had some filming, and then the concession revenue, which is our tennis concessionaires. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Commissioner Everly, do you want to ask any questions?
Sure. I was just wondering, I think I saw, I don't remember if it was in this report or a different one, but that you're renting field space to groups that are doing group exercise classes. Is that right?
President Wilson, Commissioner Eberly, yes, the city began offering park space for fitness classes and activities. Sevag will actually cover that in his presentation as we give a recreation report update. But yes, we did begin offering park space for rental for fitness, for gyms basically, or people who used to rent gym space to offer exercise classes that are no longer able to operate indoors.
Okay, I was just wondering about the revenue implications for that, whether that's going to be a significant source of revenue or no.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Eberly, can you repeat the question?
I was just wondering what kind of revenue you're expecting from that source.
To be honest, we don't really have a good estimate for that. We know that there were businesses that were interested in using park space because they can no longer operate their fitness classes indoors. We also had some instructors that were using our community centers that were offering some exercise classes in our facilities who are no longer able to. So we really don't have a good estimate as to what the estimated revenue would be from that. So at this time, we don't really have a good number because we don't know what the actual interest would be.
Okay, thank you.
No question? Commissioner Michaels, do you have any questions?
Yes. Under the salaries and benefits, you had mentioned that staff had been reallocated as facilities were closed, and they were reallocated for delivery of meals, other functions. Is that reflected in this report, or are the salaries and benefits of the employees set here regardless of the work and hours that they were doing?
President Wilson, Commissioner Michaels, the salary and benefits for the full-time staff have remained in the programs that they are that they were originally hired for and operating. So, for example, if Will, who's a coordinator who works in the sports complex working on citywide fields, is budgeted in this account, his salary would be reflected here. So we did not move the staff salaries because it would be too complicated and it would take too much to have to move everybody around. So everybody that is fully budgeted as far as full-time staff has remained in the programs that they were budgeted in. So yes, even though they were working on different programs as it relates to COVID because of the closures, their salaries are still reflected in the programs that they were originally operating in.
And the difference would then be the hourly staff that either didn't work or was reassigned?
Correct. So in this case, like in citywide sports, we had originally budgeted $364,923 in salaries and benefits. That includes full-time and hourly. To date, as of the reporting of this report, we had spent $261,906. So some of that is salary savings from the coordinator position, which was vacant part of the year because we had a vacancy, but also the difference is also hourly salaries and hourly staffing, where because the sports complex and citywide fields were all closed, the staff that works out of these programs were not working. And if they were as hourly staff working for meal deliveries or any other program COVID related, they were charged, the hourly staff were charged to those programs. So in this specific report, the full-time staff are reflected here, but majority of the savings are a vacancy and the hourly staff that would have been paid out of this account had they worked.
So if I'm looking at the 2018-2019 and then comparing that with the budgeted expenses, there's an increase in the salary and benefits. And you mentioned that had COVID not impacted the attendance or the rentals, the revenue would have been about the same. Was there an effort to try and increase the revenue with the additional staff that was budgeted?
So the increase in the staff salaries and benefits, some of that is annual increases based on MOUs. So it's not necessarily hourly staff that would have been budgeted there. It could also be the full-time staff salaries that would have increased from one year to the next. So the anticipation would be to try to increase the revenues, yes, but also Some of the programs that we offer are not revenue generating programs, and so that may just be where your salaries are more than what you're bringing in as far as revenues. But yes, so the increase from 18-19 to 19-20 would have been salary increases if you're comparing it to those 2 years.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to ask one question, which is, you mentioned that the accruals aren't all completed yet for the accounting, and I should think that most of the salaries, though, and that would be tallied up by now, because it would go through June 30th. At this point, we're into August. I would think they've got that bagged. So it's probably more like, I'm just, conjecture here, maybe some maintenance and that sort of thing would still not have been recorded yet, depending on vendor invoices being presented and that sort of thing. Sometimes it takes a little more time for that. And also maybe, I'm wondering if there's other, maybe non-cash depreciation expense and that sort of thing. The other thing I wondered about is, I think we're comparing, though, when we look at the 18 to 19, we're comparing to the final. Is that correct? The final actual. So we're not comparing the unfinal 1920 to the unfinal 1890. Is that correct?
President Wilson, yes, you are correct. So as it relates to the accruals, most of it will probably be M&O, because most of the salaries are probably already recorded. There may be some adjustments that happen as we start reviewing the accounts, as we start doing program evaluations as far as analysis for the budget. Sometimes there's people who mischarge, so those types of changes might be reflected in the salaries. But for the most part, it will be M&O charges that might be increasing from this report at this time compared to next year's report when we report a 1920 as a final. But in comparison, yes, the 18-19 numbers that you're seeing are the final numbers for last year. So those numbers will be it'll be the same for 1920 right now. Will reflect the final numbers when we report 2021. So yes, we are reporting, comparing 18-19 final numbers to 19-20 as of today.
That's what I was thinking, but thank you for confirming that. Thank you very much.
We, in general, President Wilson, members of the commission, we've tried to think about, what would be the best method to report the financials, because at the time we do the reports, like for example, in this case, the year end's not done. If we were to wait till year end to finish, then all the reports would have to be done in the same month, and that would be just too much. So we've kind of been changing up the reports to try to figure out what would be the best comparison from one year to the next. We used to do calendar year reports where we were reporting on the calendar year, but in reality, that was taking half a year of one fiscal year and half a year of another fiscal year, even though it was the calendar year of a program. So that we felt like that might not be the right comparison, financials versus the actual operations. So I think in the last 2 months or 3 months, we may have switched the reporting for the financials to be calendar year to calendar year, and then just footnote that the numbers may change because a commissioner may take last year's report and compare it to this year's report, and the numbers may have changed slightly, but that's because at the time of the report, the books may have not been closed and something might be recorded. So that's why we try to make a disclosure and footnote that information, so that if you were to pull last year's report, the 18-19 numbers might be significantly, not significantly, but might be a little different, and so that would be the difference.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Our next report is
Item 6C, MyGlendale Annual Report, Fiscal Year 2019-2020.
Good afternoon, President Wilson, members of the commission. My name is John Malagyan.
John, your mic.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Yes. Good afternoon, President Wilson, members of the commission. My name is John Malagyan, Community Services Supervisor, here to present the MyGlendale Annual Report. I'll go ahead and dive right in. It's a little description about the program. We target 4th and 5th graders in the south part of the 134. We develop free recreation after-school sports programs. We use programs as an introductory vehicle to organize sports. We encourage healthy and nutritious eating. We provide means for participants to be physically active. The program details continued. The schools involved are Cerritos, Columbus, Edison, Jefferson, Mann, Marshall, Muir, and R.D. White elementary schools. The sports we lock in on are flag football, volleyball, basketball, and soccer. We have a Glendale Outdoors Go program for nature education and outdoor recreation components. We have nutrition and health components, BMI measurements, collaborations with Verdugo Hills Hospital, sports excursions, excursions to collegiate and professional sporting events. Some of the more details, USC sites for practice is where we use. Monday through Thursday, kids get dismissed at 5 p.m. Principals recruit the participants for the program. They get a lot of support from AAALP, provides training to the city staff. GUSD also provides nutrition services, provides a nutritious snack at each site, Monday through Thursday. It takes about 16 recreation leaders and 2 coaches per site to run the program. In 2019-2020, we served a total of 552 duplicated youth. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the soccer season was canceled. Game times and locations. Games take place at city facilities on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Students are transported to and from game locations via school bus. All games start no later than 3 p.m. All teams play once a week. All players must play in every game. Parents pick up students from school sites. Each season concludes with a championship day. The benefits of One Glendale, which are many. Children who would normally be alone and unsupervised after school have a place to go with structured activities, which in turn will build leadership skills and teamwork, help provide grades, assist with reducing juvenile crimes by keeping them engaged in sports, promote a healthy lifestyle and reduce childhood obesity, teach nature education, and promote outdoor recreation. Some of the partners, and there's many, Glendale Parks and Open Space Foundation, the Glendale Unified School District. This year we started partnering with USC Verdugo Hills Hospital. We've had an ongoing partnership with Dignity Health Glendale Memorial, obviously the Parks Department, and Glendale Water and Power. Some of our additional supporters, which come in very huge on championship days, are the Crescenta Valley Choir. As you can see there, they brought 9 or 10 of their students to our basketball championship, which was fantastic. And we have the Glendale Explorers, which present colors all simultaneously before the games begin. Some of our sports excursions, this year we got a 50-ticket donation to go to a UCLA football game versus Oregon State. Some of the kids have never been to any type of sporting event, so it was fantastic to see the energy and the pageantry of the game, and the Rose Bowl is such a historic facility. In fact, before the game started, we had a We Go to College fair where they got to meet some of the players, the water polo players, the volleyball players. They got stickers, they got lanyards, they got swag bags, so it was really fun. In January, we took them to a CSUN volleyball game. They got to get on the court, meet the players, high-five the mascots, really get that interaction with the group. And this year we kind of decided to partner with our local Glendale College for our basketball field trip. We called it Glendale Family Night. We had over, I think, 48 participants, students, and 8 entire families show up. Parking was free, game was free, and in fact, if you could see the picture on the left there, they allowed both, the One Glendale team came out, all the kids, and both the San Marino College and Glendale College took a nice picture together, if you can see there, and then actually at halftime, the kids got to shoot around on the same court the players were playing on. So it was a real fun experience. They got calendars for the school year where they could be a little more organized and detailed. A little more about the GO program. Participants are transported to the following sites: Duke-Majan Wilderness Park, Brand Park, the Glendale Sports Complex. The participants enjoy outdoor activities consisting of outdoor games, nature crafts, interpretive hikes, and environmental education. Championship days, these are the build-ups to all of our seasons, kind of climaxes, and as you can see, we've tried to enhance the pictures and the energy level. Flag football on the left, volleyball on the right, and basketball, which is a little bit cut off there on the bottom. We were able to add a few extra elements that just really make the pictures pop, and the kids had a blast. More about the basketball championship night. We partnered with the Los Angeles Clippers this year. So we were able to do a few wonderful things for the kids. Lamont Murray is a former Clipper great. He was a Pac-10 great as well. What he did was, if you can see the picture on the left here, he sat with the kids on the bench and he gave them coaching tips. And at halftime, he addressed the entire group and talked to them about healthy living and just being a little more in tune with their homework and their families and supporting one another. This is happening on March 6th. So a week later, the whole COVID thing has happened. So this is one of those moments where you saw how wonderful the program was. It was right in front of you, and then a week later, it was gone. And we had them bring Chuck the Condor, who was kind of jumping in and out of the team benches and really being involved. And again, some of the photos are great. And if you see the picture on the right here, it's a very handsome man standing next to Lamont Murray, and another good-looking guy a little further left to him. We tried to bring our principals out a little more. We wanted them to be more involved with the games. In fact, Armina Alexson, who's the principal at Jefferson, was also at the game and wasn't there for the photo, but it was the first time we had 4 or 5 principals show up to a game and really participate and be a part of the larger group. So really fun night. Program outcomes, participants undergo 3 agility tests at the beginning and end of each season. Verdugo Hills Hospital staff collect weight and height data to collect the individual's body mass index readings for participants. Verdugo Hills Hospital provides a pre and post nutrition test for all participants, parent program surveys, and Verdugo Hills Hospital handles all of these aspects. And a participation nutrition survey, basically they pre-test them, they give them the nutrition training, and then they do the post-test with the kids so they can really figure out what they picked up throughout the entire season. These are very quick seasons. They're 8 weeks, 7 weeks, 9 weeks. So we want to get to them early. We want to give them healthy ideas and tips, come in and give them a nutrition survey and nutrition assessments, and then test them one last time to see how well they've done. And like I said, it goes very quickly. You're doing a post-test and you're back to a pre-test like a week later. And at the end of the year, we do a sports wrap-up meeting with our partners and school principals. We want to pick everybody's brain. We know it's not perfect, and a lot of the times we were trying to figure out what was the best way to pass out packets. We wanted the principals to be more involved. We want it to really be based on good attendance, good behavior, and along the way, we've actually been able to communicate to make sure that kids that are in the program are still behaving while they're in the program. Just because they made it in the beginning doesn't mean that they're doing well enough to maintain staying in the program. So we're in constant communication with assistant principals, principals, secretaries, coaches, anyone we can get our hands on. Some of the survey results from 2019, 2020, I don't want to run through all the statistics, but the numbers are up because we as a group are really extending ourselves to make sure we discuss hydration and nutritious eating. And I'll show you a graph in a second where you'll get it kind of a trend. So we really started taking a good look at the statistics in 2016, 17, and I know that's a lot of blue, but if you look at the darker blue, that's kind of where we are now. And stats are up in water consumption, a little bit of weight loss. The grades have definitely improved. Listening, as the supervisor of the program, I see the kids listening well. They understand what the coaches need. They understand the importance of paying attention during timeout. So, and then from the parents, we get the perspective of the kids are listening at home better because they're picking up some of the good habits at One Glendale. Choosing to eat fruit, overall interaction is improved. Confidence, which is a big one. Feeling good about themselves and their leadership skills. So across the board, these are all great statistics, and I love the fact that we're trending up and not down. Some of the actuals and budgeted, it seems pretty even. Ultimately, we did have a community services specialist spot that was open for quite a bit of time in 2018-19, and then in 2019-20, obviously we've had COVID, so those two things have kind of impacted the overall. And there was some hourly wages issues too, so we didn't have every spot filled in the throughout the year, so that affects it. But ultimately, not bad. Any questions?
Commissioner Eberly, do you have any questions?
Yes. Can you tell me how many participants you had on? Sorry, I think you reported on. You reported duplicated. Can you tell us how many unduplicated?
I can't tell you how many unduplicated. I can go back and find out. We do have a lot of duplicate returners, but that's because the principals are selecting. We're not necessarily telling them how to go about doing that. We try to extend ourselves by saying, try to pick some kids that haven't done it, and they'll send us a list of kids that they'd like to bring and merge into the program that haven't had a chance. But most of our kids, remember, it's not a daycare program, but a lot of the parents are struggling to what they're going to do with their kids after school, and it does turn into a system in which I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of parents saying, please let them play. Not only do we need them to be a part of the sport, but we also want them, we need a place for them to go after school that's healthy and safe. So, Kate, if you want, Commissioner Eberly, I can go back and try to find out from the district a little more specifically what is duplicated and unduplicated with the kids. Like, we can look into that.
That'd be great. I mean, I think it's appropriate that the principals would be, choosing the kids who participate. I'm just curious how many kids we're actually reaching. And then I also wondered, I know that there's the Verdugo Hills before and after survey, but I don't think we saw the results for that. We just see the parent survey. Can we see what that is? I have a concern, which is that unless all the kids are overweight, I don't think 98% of the kids should be losing weight over the course of the program. It just seems, the number seems off to me.
Well,
because I've seen these kids playing, and they're definitely not overweight.
yeah, I don't think it's maybe that's just the wrong way to put it. I think it's more of a maintaining a healthy weight, if that makes sense. And so we've discussed this in the past. Maybe we'll figure out a better way to word that. I don't think it's a matter of weight loss. I think it's just a matter of maintaining a healthy weight. So we'll take that definitely into consideration. I mean, ultimately, they are doing their body mass index checks, and we're getting the statistics for most of those things. We don't go too far into detail with the BMI just because we keep things confidential. But I just think if we reword the lost weight and say maintain weight, it would make a little more sense and be a little more correct. Does that answer the question?
I would love to see the before and after, if you can aggregate the data in a way to make it not violate confidentiality.
I think we can come back to you with those statistics, definitely. I don't have them on me necessarily right now. But as you can see here, this is this year's. These are the parent surveys. So the actual body mass index statistics, I don't have those with me, unfortunately. But it's something we can definitely look into.
President Wilson.
Right. No, I wasn't expecting you'd have it with you. Sorry, Deputy Director Alexanian, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say we do have the data available, so we'll go back and figure out how to put it together without sharing the confidential information and bring back the details of that. Definitely, we can do that for you.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Thank you.
We have all the statistics. We're just confidentiality-wise, we don't want to share too much, but.
All right, do you have any more questions, Commissioner Eberly, or is that?
I do not. Thank you.
Commissioner
No
Santamaria?
question. No question.
Commissioner Michaels, do you have any questions?
I do want to go ahead and say I'd like to see the data as Commissioner Eberly would. I appreciate the program and the outcomes and look forward to it coming back. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to commend you for your enthusiasm, first of all, and I really appreciate it. And I'm just really sad that the program, right,
Yes, I know.
I mean, I just hope that the kids don't lose their conditioning and
That's
their
that's the
habits that
concern,
they've formed. And I hope that we're able to continue it, pick it up again, as soon as possible. Because I know, with these kids, they forget. They literally forget what they're told. So,
Well, we're realizing now how essential this program is as we see the kids not having any activity whatsoever in the house. I got two of my own, and it's essential to them feeling good about themselves and their mental state as well. So I'm hoping sooner rather than later, definitely.
perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry? Oh, my little flashlight, my little pen light, thank you. Next item, please.
Next is item 6D, Recreation and Community Services Section Monthly Activity Report for August 2020.
Good afternoon, President Wilson, members of the Commission. My name is Seva Garavidian, Senior Community Services Supervisor with the Parks Department, and I will be going over the monthly activity report for the month of July. So I was advised to try to move this along as fast as I can. So some of the first slides we're gonna see are repeats from last month. So what I wanna do is fast forward to the slide that talks about our openings since our last commission meeting, if you guys will just follow along with me here. It's going to be 2 slides over, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe catch up as well. Okay. So since our last commission meeting, on August 4th, we opened up our fields for youth sports groups. So LA County released protocols for youth sports groups to continue or to begin practicing on our fields. Whereas in the past, since June 22, they were allowed to practice on our fields following childcare protocols and having camps and clinics as opposed to an actual practice. The youth sports protocols were updated, allowing them to have practices without any games or scrimmages or anything along those lines, whether it's in between the squad or with any other squad. So you can't play another team from another club or organization, and you can't play amongst your own teammates and your own team members. However, they're allowed to continue to practice and call it a practice as opposed to a camp or clinic. So that started as of August 4th. And then on August 12th, as Commissioner Eberly pointed out, we began offering our parks and facilities for businesses in Glendale, brick and mortar businesses that would operate a gym that aren't allowed to do so. So they need an outdoor space to practice or to have their activities, along with those individuals that would rent out one of our facilities or somebody else's facility and carry on their physical training, one-on-one training, whatever the case may be, or somebody who lives in Glendale or caters to the Glendale community from abroad, and allowing them to rent our facilities to carry out these activities. And starting on August 22nd, LA County has not opened up the skate parks, but the state of California has released guidance for skate parks to open up. Pending staff availability, we plan on opening the Vertigo Skate Park as early as August 22. We're working on staff and addressing some of their concerns about coming back and being open to the public and working with them from there. So as I mentioned before, park spaces are available for rent. Those interested could go to our glendaleca.gov/parks homepage and get the information for how this program works. Basically, upon figuring out what site is listed, they would fill out a facility reservation request form, contact the site supervisor that does the facility rental. We could go over the rates, go over insurance requirements, any other liability waiver requirements, and process permits from there. We're processing permits for 1 month at a time at this point. On July 22nd, 2020, we had Glendale Cruise, the rebooted version of Glendale Cruise Night, given the COVID protocols. We had over 150 cars that we noticed were participating in the event. The event was from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Brand Boulevard between Doran and Colorado Boulevard. Some people were just driving up and down the street, cruising. Other people drove up and down, parked their cars, picnic next to their car. Everybody was following social distancing. Everybody was in masks. Although we saw a lot of people not only just hanging out next to the car, but going to a local business, buying some food, eating at the restaurants. When cruise was taking place, indoor eating was, for the time being, allowed, so not too much of the outdoor alfresco style dining was taking place at the time. All of that has come in since cruise took place. And as we brought to our commission meeting last month, we talked about, we're working with Glendale Unified School District to come up with remote learning program. So that program has now materialized. It's called Education Connection and Maple Stars After School Camp. So essentially it's 2 programs. The first program, which is Education Connection, will take place from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Maple Stars Camp will take place from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. The first part of the day is absolutely free. There is no charge for the first part of the day, and it covers basically the GUSD school hours, let's say. We understand that some schools, depending on high school or junior high or whatever the case may be, might be out after 2 o'clock. But for the most part, most of the students, from what we're seeing, is until 2 o'clock. Please understand that as we're developing this program, the information that's available to us that says what the school schedule is going to be like for TK through 2nd or 3rd to 6th grade wasn't up yet. Glendale Unified School District was in negotiation with their Teachers Association on what those models will be, what the instruction time will be. So at our best guess, this was the program that we came up with, 7 to 2, 2 to 6. Now, 2 to 6 is our traditional summer camp, Maple Stars after school camp fees. And that part of the day will be Glendale residents, $55 per week per child, and all others, non-residents, will be $70 per week per child. So the program is basically twofold. The first part of the day, the kids come in, they sign in, they get their computers ready. City staff will make sure they're connected to the Wi-Fi, they're not having any other network issues or anything like that. And then they'll have a schedule that the parents will provide saying, little Johnny needs to be in class for this subject from 8:30 to 9:15. Our staff have that schedule and make sure little Johnny signed into that classroom and they're following along. They're basically proctoring these Zoom sessions as they're taking place. When little Johnny has a break, staff will say, okay, listen, your next class is not for another 15 minutes. Why don't you go eat your snack right now? And then get ready. If you need to go to use the restroom, let's go take care of that, and then go back into the next session. And the day will continue until lunch, and it'll continue again until it's completely done and the kids are off school. Around 2 o'clock, whatever the time may be. Parents will then pick up the child, or they stick around in our after-school camp, at which point it turns into our traditional summer camp style activities where we've adapted regular summer camp games and try to provide some sort of recreational fun for these kids until their parents pick them up later on in the evening. The camp is open for 5 to 14-year-olds. They have to be 5-year-olds could be either in kinder or first grade or TK, whatever the case may be. Our requirement is they need to have a Zoom schedule. It's not a free daycare for the parent to drop off. If the kid doesn't have some sort of class schedule that they need to follow, then this isn't the camp for them. That's a childcare service that we're not providing here. We're trying to do education connection because the school district and schools are on the remote learning model. So we talked about the age. The locations, as you see on the slide, we're offering 5 locations. They are the Civic Auditorium, where we're gonna accommodate anywhere from 30 to 36 kids. Dunsmore Park, where we're gonna accommodate up to 12 kids. Glen Oaks Park, which is Joe Bridges Clubhouse, we'll have another 10 to 12 kids there. Maple Park Community Center will go from 20 to 24, and Pacific Community Center from 30 to 36. So the low end, we're looking at about 100 kids. On the high end, in total, we're looking at about 120 kids at all 5 of these sites. And moving on, let's talk about our summer day camp program. Summer day camp started on July 6th, and they just ended on Friday, August 14. We used 4 sites throughout the city to implement this program. Those sites were Brand Studios, which was in the past at Griffith Manor Park, Glendale Civic Auditorium, which used to be Verdugo Park, Maple Park Community Center, and Pacific Community Center. In addition to the 4 traditional camps, we also offered our Grom Skate Camp, which is our beginner level skate camp. And that was at Verdugo Park. Camp was really well over all 5 of those sites, or all 5 of those operations. Fortunately, to this day, we haven't had one report of any kind of COVID exposure or anything like that. So we didn't have to shut down camp. We didn't have to do anything along those lines. So we were really fortunate that way. Staff was really aggressive in making sure that the kids were washing their hands, comfortably reminding them to please wear your mask, put your mask on. And staff was doing a really good job in thinking out of the box and adapting some of the games, and we'll see some pictures. For the most part, I could tell you our averages. Over 6 weeks, Maple Park averaged about 25 campers per week. Pacific averaged 55 campers per week. Brand averaged 22 campers per week. And Maple Stars at the Civic averaged 36 campers per week. Here's some pictures of the camps. Notice in the background on the picture to your left how far the kids are from each other. And then we're using tables or hula hoops, and you'll see the hula hoops in here in a minute, to basically identify spaces where the kids should be hanging out and making sure they're not on top of each other and they're wearing their masks and stuff like that. It worked for the most part. They needed to be reminded, they're kids at the end of the day, but they had a really good time. We got a lot of positive emails from parents saying, thank you, our kids had a blast. We really appreciate the program, etc. So here's some pictures at the Civic Auditorium. Here you can see one of the campers getting their temperature check in the morning. Before checking in, before signing in, we need to make sure the temperature is below 100.3. 100.4 or above, we would actually have the kid wait to one side, recheck, and if they were still too high, we would actually not allow them to come into camp. So this was done outside of the building before anything else happened, before the parent even left. There's another child doing a craft, and then in the top right corner, you could see how we've adapted a classic park game called carom boards and used frisbees, hockey sticks, and pool noodles to create a giant carom board with sidewalk chalk and repurpose the playground, the parking lot at the Civic to create a giant carom board. And there's examples of this throughout our summer camp 6 weeks of experience of adapting existing games and making it more fun and interesting for our kids. Moving on to the next slide, here you see a unicorn craft, but the unicorn craft is also wearing a mask, so again, adapted for COVID purposes. And you see the hula hoop as the child's designated space in the morning as we're getting ready to go. The other picture is a sports day at Brand Studios, and the participants were encouraged to wear their favorite team jersey, and apparently we've got some Giants fans here in the heart of Los Angeles. Moving on, you'll see some pictures here at Pacific Community Center. Our facilities, gyms were used as a hub. One side was playing field hockey with those same hockey sticks and pickleballs. The other side, we had the pickleball nets out, we had the ping pong tables out. And after each group would cycle through the gym, all of that equipment was getting sanitized. So we took out the balls from the ball racks, we put the paddles on, sanitized them, let them dry, and then let the next group of kids come up and do the activity. Moving to the next slide. Here's a picture of Grom's Skate Camp. Basically, their activity in a nutshell was check in, skate, learn how to skate, do some arts and crafts, decorate your board, skate some more, eat lunch, skate some more. And for 4 weeks, these kids had a blast. That's all they wanted to do. If a kid is addicted to video games, all they want to do is play video games. Well, these kids are addicted to skateboarding and having a good time this way. And they really had a good time as well. And at Grom Skate Camp, we averaged 18 campers per week. As we mentioned during our last commission meeting, the pool opened on June 15. Our programs still continue at the pool. We have lap swim by reservation only, rec swim by reservation only ahead of time. We have some lanes available for drop-in last-minute customers. Our pool lessons continued, and from last meeting, I wanted to say that we had a total of 232 participants register for swim lessons during this last summer. Lesson capacities were limited to 4 participants per class. Parents had to be in the water with the participants, and here you can see from the picture that the lifeguards were teaching out of the water on the pool deck itself. Moving on to the next slide. The virtual programs continued during the month of July. We had our senior exercise classes continue, our line dancing class, and our Zumba class. Since our last commission meeting, we were able to add 4 additional classes to our senior exercise offering, class offering. That's an aerobics class twice a week and a muscle toning class twice a week. Our virtual programs continue, whether it's Club Maple, Get Fit, our youth and family services programs like Teen Night Out, our senior classes, and those are all advertised on GlendaleParksAtHome.com. And here are some pictures of our STAR participants and their bi-weekly meetings. STAR is gonna ramp up their meetings to once a week because school is now back in session and we want those kids to be in contact with the officers weekly. And we wanna be able to provide services weekly. You could also see a picture of Glendale Association of Realtors. They came in on 2 teen night outs and did a 2-session presentation. The first session was how to become a realtor, and the second session was what do you do after you get your real estate license. We had a good turnout for that. And then here you could see Officer Newberg from Glendale Police Department doing a presentation on how to become a police cadet. In leveraging our partnership with the Junior Clippers, we also had the Junior Clippers drop in on a teen night out activity and discuss ways children participants could be active while staying at home. Different exercises, different techniques they could do. And lastly, we ended our last meeting's presentation with a video, our We Miss You Too video. And after our commission meeting, we submitted that, or we shared that on social media, whether it was YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And our colleagues at the California Parks and Rec Society noticed the video, watched the video, recognized the video, and gave us a 5 Snaps Award for preparing that video. So we're really proud of that. It wasn't expected, so we're grateful that we got recognized for our work. And that concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Commissioner Eberly, do you have any questions? Oh.
Oh, sorry, I was holding the button. I was wondering about the STAR program, whether you do any follow-up with participants, and how long has that program been going?
Commissioner Eberly, President Wolfson, the STAR program, we are doing a biweekly follow-up. Our case managers are talking to the parents of each of the families of each of our kids on a biweekly basis, constantly asking them if there's any supplies they need, if there's any additional help or resources they need, and they're connecting them to those resources. In addition to that, the Glendale Association of Realtors, we're fortunate enough to say, was willing to cover the expenses for some of the crafts and some school supplies. I'm going to turn over and look at John for confirmation. So, Commissioner Eberly, the Glendale Association of Realtors has been gracious enough to ask the kids for a wish list. As long as it was educational or school related, they were able to provide a wish list, and up to $50 of product or items on that wish list, the Glendale Association of Realtors was going to sponsor and provide to these kids. So every other week, to answer your question, we follow up with them, see what they're doing. An officer is with the participants interacting as they are available, given their schedules. There is a transition in the lead officer, and we have yet to identify one officer that's going to continue with the group moving forward. But we are collecting, or we are accepting donations for that program in terms of supplies or whatever the case may be through our partners, not directly coming out to us, but our partner agencies will ask us what's available, what can we do, how do we help, and we provide them the information and we move from there. And the program, I have to look at ONIG for when it was established.
President Wolfson, members of the commission, Commissioner Eberly, the program was established in 1996 in collaboration with the police department and the Parks Department.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. That was a lot of good information. I was actually curious about like the long-term follow-up. Like, do we know of the kids who have been through that program since its inception, where they've ended up and how they've done?
So, Commissioner Eberly, on the long-term follow-up, we haven't been doing. Ever since we had our changeover in the last 3 years, we've gone through 2 different supervisors. We haven't been able to monitor where these kids have been. We need to start doing that as well. As staff have come on board and we've basically laid a new foundation for the program and given it more consistency, that's one of the projects that they're going to be tasked with. Unfortunately, we weren't able to address that at the end of this year as the program was coming to its end and their graduation cycle. It's something that I definitely want to bring back. We hear about 1 or 2 students that used to be in the STAR program that either they've moved on to the military or they got married or they're now working at this location, but it's more on an informal basis and our full-time staff's ability to maintain their relationships. Where one staff would be really interested, our current staff needs to get into the habit of making that relationship, keeping it professional, and following up with them in a couple of years down the road, and always encouraging them to keep coming back. Unfortunately, that program did undergo some transition from 2013 to 2019, I want to say 18, if I'm not mistaken. So in those 5 years, multiple part-time specialists that were directly with the kids have changed over. One of them got hired full-time for our homeless services section, for example. One of them got hired as a firefighter and moved on. And so we haven't been able to retain that hourly staff, which would have the most knowledge with those participants, let alone we've had 2 supervisor changes in there as well. But that's definitely something that we need to bring back and move forward on. We have all the data. We know how to contact them, assuming the numbers are valid, and we'll start working on that in the next couple of months.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that.
Commissioner Kofan, do you have any questions? Commissioner Michaels, any comments or questions?
I just go ahead and thank staff for the day camps, particularly the school day camps. I know several people have spoken to me in support of that it was a wonderful program. So I want to thank you for continuing to adapt to this environment.
Thank you, Commissioner Michaels. Nice background, by the way.
I wanted to just ask one quick question. You commented, you said that if the children at the, if they have a temperature of 103, is that right? They get held.
It's the temperature limit per the protocols right now is 100.4 degrees.
Oh, 100 points.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry. In whatever I said, there should have been a point. 100.3, 100.4, not 104, as in 10.
Because I was thinking, my God, if their temperature is 104, they should be.
Yeah, President Wilson, at 104, I hope they're not knocking on our door. They're knocking on some ER's door or a doctor via Zoom or something, however way they connect.
Good news. Okay, and I just want to say I'm glad that we're carrying on the programs as best we can, and because it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing, you know. And I'm not surprised that video won an award. That was really, really well done. So anyhow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next report is
Item 6E, Park Services Section Monthly Activity Report for July 2020.
Thank you. President Wolfson, members of the commission, in your packets, we have the Park Services Report. I do have Mr. Panosian on the call. If you have any questions regarding the number of work orders and the great job Park Services does in maintaining our parks, he's more than happy to answer any of the questions that you have.
Commissioner Eberly, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. No question. Michael, Commissioner Michaels?
I would like to ask Mr. Panosian, a couple of weeks ago, there was a contract, Public Works and Urban Forestry, before City Council regarding pesticide work. Now, I had some people talk to me concerned that glyphosate might be used in the parks, and it was clarified that this is a Public Works Urban Forestry program. My question to you is there a way that we can encourage our friends in those departments to follow our integrated pest management program or some of those principles?
Yes, good afternoon, President Wilson, Commissioner Michaels. Yes, that was a Public Works contract for integrated pest service for the medians and alleyways that they control. In my conversation with the group, they've also communicated that they don't use glyphosate any longer themselves. It is not for the parks for sure. We haven't used glyphosate, which is Roundup, the past 3 years since we instituted our IPM. And I believe Public Works has followed suit on that. We will continue to communicate with them. I've shared some of the new products that we're using, and they are looking at those options as well for them to apply in their applications. So yes, we're having that communication with our colleagues, and I'm almost 99% certain they're not using Roundup as well in their program.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you because it's a lot of extra work with the COVID-19, with having to sanitize and clean everything constantly, so I really appreciate it. And on the same note as Commissioner Michaels, I wanted to say I'm glad to see that the pesticide applications are being held to a minimum, and that you mentioned a wasp nest being removed, but I'm hoping that we're leaving the bees alone or relocating them if necessary. And I think that's probably the case, I suspect. So I'm really, really grateful for all the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, President Wilson. And to reassure you, every time we have an issue with bees, wasp nests, we call hired contractors. They'll come in and remove the hive themselves, and we take them safely. They do not kill. None of the contractors we hire will come in and kill any of the bees. So they will take the hive and the nest and will take it away.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that. Thank you very much. So I think we're adjourned.
Good job.
Thank you.